Many of you know about the microbiome of your own gut, but have you considered that it might be mirroring the health of the Earth's microbiome? And both are affecting our ability to evolve consciously? I'm Cielo, your host of We Are the Soil, where we have conversations around where gut health meets spirituality. Hello, Monique. Thank you so much for joining We Are the Soil. We're recording now, so thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to interview you. So I'm Julie Cielo. I'm the founder of Firm Fatale and the creator of We Are the Soil podcast. And I just want to introduce everyone to you, Monique. Can you please pronounce your last name so I don't butcher it?
Yeah, it's Portuguese, so it's a long one. It's Figueiredo.
Figueiredo. Okay.
Yeah.
So Monique Figueiredo is an eco-entrepreneur and the founder of Compostable LA. And this is very near and dear, obviously, to my heart, and obviously it is to you as well. But can you just tell the folks first off, why should people even care about composting and soil health in general? Like, why should anyone care?
It's true. They're not the most sexy topics to talk about. So it's not like, sustainable fashion that is easy to get really excited about. But when you talk about soil, it's something that we interact with in our world every day, but don't often think about. I mean, really, if you wear clothes and you eat food, you should care about soil because it was used for both of those items.
No doubt.
And it's all around us. I mean, the trees that enable us to breathe clean air they need healthy soils, so the more nutritious foods we want to eat, they need healthy soils. And the reason how that ties into composting is composting gives us healthy soil. We're losing our top layer of soil at an exponential rate. And I'm trying to remember the rate. I feel like it's like 1/3 of an acre per year. And so
I don't think people really realize how impactful that is, that the fact that we have literally about
60 years.
60 years left of topsoil over the entire planet. And it seems like things are accelerating at a rate. So I'm not even sure how accurate that projection is any longer, but it seems like that, composting is probably one of the most single important things that we could do for climate change. And, people don't even understand, how are my kitchen scraps going to make a difference? So could you just tell people how their kitchen scraps can make a difference? Because it really is important. And I want the listeners to understand and feel motivated to start doing it no matter where they're at.
Exactly. Yeah. Let me cover a couple of the big points. So, if your kitchen scraps end up in the trash and they head to landfill, they don't break down. They kind of slowly mummify while releasing methane, which is even worse than carbon dioxide. So they've dug up carrots in landfills that were perfectly preserved because in landfills it's an anaerobic condition. So there's not enough bacteria or oxygen alive there to break it down. So if you're diverting your food scraps from a landfill by composting them, then not only are you already right off the bat reducing methane emissions, but then healthy soil actually captures carbon dioxide in the air and stores it in its relationship with plants. Soil itself can't do that, but healthy soil is very carbon heavy and plants love carbon. And so when plants take in carbon dioxide and put it in the soil, then we're getting cleaner air from carbon dioxide. The other thing is, healthy soil, because of how high its carbon nutrient content is, it acts as a great stormwater pollutant filter, kind of like your Brita filter. And it actually also holds more water 10 times its weight in water. So now we're talking about things like drought and less water reliance and that kind of
Yeah, we're
thing.
seeing people move by the droves out of countries for these
Exactly.
reasons. It's quite concerning.
Exactly. So, those are just some of the big points, that we can go into more and more. But right off the bat, you're seeing cleaner air, cleaner water, less water usage from just your one radical act of composting your kitchen scraps.
Yeah, it's profound, and I think the more we spread the word and let people know that first off, this is the original form of fermentation.
Yeah.
um, and if you're fermenting in your home, great, but if you're not composting, we're contributing to something that is exactly the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish with climate
Mm-hmm.
change.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I just want to know, how did you, I mean, obviously you saw a need in the Los Angeles community whenever you started the organization, but can you just talk about like why is the city of Los Angeles and the sanitation department failing that we
Mm,
would need to have private composting nonprofits like yours? Can you speak to Los Angeles and their sanitation issues and
hmm.
other cities perhaps around the country so folks
Yeah.
can understand why this is needed?
Right. So this is something that's particularly passionate of mine. So
Mhm.
what I am is a community composter. The same of LA Compost is who is here. We're
Mhm.
community composters, and we don't see our role as picking up the slack for major haulers. We see us as offering something completely different, which is
Okay.
building communities through waste. So waste is not waste, it's a resource, and communities should have access to that resource. And so what major haulers do is they're going to truck your waste outside of the city and compost it and either make biomethane for their trucks with it or make soil that they give to the agriculture industry, which is great. But what we say is, hey, if we really care about environmental justice issues, if we care about food sovereignty and solving food apartheid, then we need to have access to healthy soil in our communities.
Mm.
And that's what community composters do. We keep the soils in LA to rebuild the soils in LA. So I
That's
just want to
amazing.
give that kind of caveat. Yeah.
Well,
uh
I just wanted to
um
mention though that like the green bins at LA Sanitation, I had been throwing my kitchen scraps in the green bins and got a slap on the wrist by LA Sanitation for doing that, and they said no,
yeah.
no, you're only allowed to throw trees, and it
Yes.
specifically says inside of the green bin fruits and vegetables. So whenever I called and inquired, they were like, no, it has to be attached to a limb.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Yeah, like a
doesn't
garden.
even make it doesn't even make sense to me though that why are they taking away yard waste, but
Right.
they're not willing to take away kitchen waste?
So the
Isn't it
question
all the
is,
same?
yeah, no, the question comes is how are they processing it? So yard waste can
Right.
be mulched. It doesn't
Mm,
necessarily have to be composted, because your yard waste is carbon heavy, but your kitchen waste is nitrogen heavy. And
interesting.
so those are different makeups. And when they're composted together, carbon and nitrogen, because you want
Hmm.
your browns and your greens, you'll hear
Right.
that referenced in the compost world. They create this beautiful nutrient rich soil. But if they're not, if it's just carbon, it's mulch. And so that's a whole different process. That you don't have to kind of balance your piles and water and get the microbial activity going. You're just mulching.
Mm,
So honestly, California has a mandate. It's called SB 1383, where they're mandating composting operations. So the major haulers are going to have to get on board eventually, and you see a lot of them kind of gearing up for that. But even LA Sanitation doesn't necessarily, that's very directed towards like kind of commercial, industrial kind of things, and so individual consumers are kind of even being left behind with that bill, I would say. And that's, again, where community composters come in. And what we say is, hey, diversity and redundancy in any ecosystem is important. And the same
hmm
goes for your waste ecosystem. We're we're saying, let us kind of have free reign to operate here, so we can help the people who are being left behind by other decisions being made. And you can see it kind of talk, there's a lot of laws and regulations in place, and community composters are doing a lot of advocacy work to be included in the picture.
How progressive is Los Angeles County when it comes to this subject?
I will say, so I'm going to go bigger a little bit. California is very progressive. We're one of the only, no, Vermont does too, and I think New Jersey, but like that's kind of it on mandating composting, with that SB 1383. So, California, I just went to this composting conference, and California was talked a lot about with that law. Los Angeles is a tough cookie to crack because it's so big,
right?
And there's a lot of restrictions and regulations in place. So what that means is the big haulers, they take a longer time to move. They're not as nimble because they have all this money and stakeholders behind them versus smaller companies like myself who can just, I want to start picking up compost. Okay, I'm doing it. I have a partner. We're going.
Right.
So that's another kind of problem is when your whole waste structure is built around these big organizations, it takes time to move the ship.
Right. I really respect what you're doing. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania where we had a big giant heap of compost behind the barn that we contributed to daily. And I remember going out with the pitchfork and, spinning it. And then, that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
But, I just wanted to speak to the difference between an urban composting situation versus a rural one is completely different. I mean, you're making your own soil there. Is there anything that you can say in regards to folks that are living in urban areas and feel like, how can I make a difference? And, because they're not really seeing the soil if they don't have plants and they're not making their own compost to get the soil to feed their plants. I think a lot of folks feel disconnected from nature, and they think, well, how can I make an impact? Can you just speak to a little bit about urban and motivate people to get involved?
There's lots of, I have so many thoughts. So one, there are lots of ways to compost at home, even if you have a small apartment. Vermicomposting, bokashi composting, lots of different options. You can also do, bring your compost to a drop-off site or hire a pickup service like mine. And all those ways do give you access to the soil. We do soil give backs. I know if you drop it off with LA Compost, they give back soil to whoever's, giving the scraps. And then if you're composting at home, you have access to that soil. And so, you're might be a little bit more hands off in an urban setting, but you still have a ton of options available to you. There's 2 apps called Share Waste and Make Soil, where maybe you're dropping off at your neighbor's house and you're building community that way. And maybe in exchange for you giving your food scraps, they're growing produce with it and they give you the produce back. So it's actually a little less insular maybe than rural composting, where it's just you and just your scraps, and which is still cool and still beautiful. But in the urban community, like most things with urban living, it's really more community and external kind of interaction based.
And that is the essence of divine feminine. The soil itself is the essence of divine feminine, and community is the essence of divine feminine. So it's just really interesting that soil and community really go hand in hand. Share Waste and Make Soil are 2 apps that people can check out. If they don't want to use the soil, could they perhaps go and speak to a farmer at their farmer's market about helping to give their scraps back weekly whenever they go to the market? Or
absolutely. And if you enjoy composting but you're producing too much soil, remember that soil in its relationship with plants is really the power. Nothing's stopping you from spreading that beautiful soil throughout your walk around the neighborhood. And those plants, because you're still having a massive impact. You're not growing those plants, you don't own them, but
Mm-hmm.
they're still having a relationship with one another, the plant and the soil. And so you're
Mm.
still having a positive impact there. But absolutely, your farmer's market is a great resource for dropping off scraps. It might take a couple of tries because farmers, everybody has a different relationship with, like, well, what kind of waste are you producing and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's resources out there for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah, and it sounds like the organization that you've created makes things simple for folks, where they can just your company literally just comes and picks up the kitchen scraps,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes it easy for people that are maybe they just feel like, oh, this is too complicated. I don't have the time. I don't have the
Yeah.
resources, whatever. So I really love what you're doing. So what are you doing now? Anything you want to speak about that you're doing now?
Well, we're just keep really trying to push
Mhm.
for accessibility. So, the central of Los Angeles doesn't have a lot of composting resources right now. And so we work with LA Compost. We're Compostable, they're LA Compost, and they're close partners. And so together, we're trying to get both drop off sites and compost pickup available to central LA, which to me, is like mid city, downtown LA, Hollywood, that kind of area right in the middle.
Mhm.
So, because we just want people to have the means to compost. If they want to go to a drop off site that's free, dope, do that. If
Right.
they don't have the time, but they have maybe a little extra money, want to pay for a service, awesome, we're there too. And so
Mhm.
my main focus right now is to give access to composting to anybody in LA who wants it, whether that's through LA Compost, Compostable LA, share waste, make soil, lots of different options.
Okay. And what exactly is Root Down LA?
Oh,
I know that you're on the board.
yeah. Oh my gosh. This organization is just too perfect for me that I couldn't not be on the board. I was like, okay. Um so Root Down LA is working to they're working to create, nutritious food programs in South LA, and it is run by people who went through the Root LA program. So Karen Ramirez is the executive director there, and she actually was a Root LA student. So what they do is they teach culinary, training to youth. They teach horticulture training to youth, and then they give them
Mm.
pathways to employment.
Mm.
And so it's all about solving, again, we're going back to that environmental justice this conversation. It's all about solving, um, food deserts, wanting kids to get to know healthy food that grew up in South LA and didn't have a lot of access to it. How do they cook and prepare it? How do they grow it? And
Mm.
then how do they want to interact with it in the future? Does that want to be an opportunity for employment? Is it just something they carry throughout their life and they teach their families? Like, now that I know what a persimmon is and I've tasted it and I know how to prepare it,
Mhm.
I'm more likely to eat it.
Yeah,
Um,
this is so vital. So vital for I mean, of course I try to see things from a really high level of like,
mhm,
just that child who maybe brought up in the inner city that is completely disconnected from nature, given this opportunity. And then from that opportunity, they begin to see how we're all connected, and
exactly.
when you're in that isolated bubble of thinking that my little, a corner of the urban environment is all there is, how
Hmm.
could you ever have the kind of compassion that one, I believe, learns to grow from a sense of interconnectedness? So
Hmm.
those programs just sound so vital for our community, and I want to get more involved. But can you tell us about the California Alliance of Community Composters,
Yeah.
or any other organizations that folks here in LA specifically could perhaps or in California get involved in?
Sure. Yeah. So the California Alliance of Community Composters, it kind of goes back to that advocacy thing I was
Mm-hmm.
talking about, where community composters are trying to say, like, hey, give us, we want to be a part of this picture. And so we're a group of community composters. I helped founded the LA chapter,
Mm.
who are, advocating for that world we want to see, that
Yeah.
tiered system where people can compost at home, and if not at home, drop off sites, and if not at drop off sites, micro haulers, and if not
Mm.
micro haulers, major haulers, and so it's kind of a tiered system we're advocating for. um,
Amazing.
right now that's kind of, it's very in its early stages, the LA chapter, and we're kind of formulating, like, how do we move this forward? we've only established it maybe the end of last year.
But the conversation started, and that's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes. And there's a bigger one, like I said, this is the LA chapter. There is CAC, for all of California, and they're doing a lot of, the legislative work in Sacramento and stuff like that. So, but yeah, you've heard me, if people are looking for ways to get involved, we talked about Root Down. You've heard me mention LA Compost a million times. They are really our mentor. Michael Martinez there is just this beautiful human and a thought leader and a connector. And I can't recommend enough to try and get into his world and be near him, because he really will inspire you.
And LA Compost, what makes them different than what you're doing is that they have drop-off sites. Is that correct?
They actually process all our compost. We're really just like the middleman for people
okay.
Yes. So we're not a nonprofit. We're working to become a B Corp.
Okay.
LA Compost is the nonprofit. So, we donate all of the feedstock to them. We actually give them money each month. They're the really power hub of a nonprofit that's processing all the compost. We're the logistics person who's getting it from point A to point B.
And I'm sure a lot of your inspiration came from the Kiss the Ground soil advocacy program that you were a part of. And I'm here in Venice. So, I just interviewed Dr. Erin McMorrow, who helped to found Kiss the Ground, and then went off and wrote a book recently about divine feminine that is completely fascinating. If you haven't gotten your fingers on that book yet, it's right up our alley, particularly your alley. But I'm just wondering about the Kiss the Ground soil advocacy program and what you learned there, and how that program impacted what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, I came to composting originally for the diversion, right? Like, cool, something's not going into the landfill.
Right.
What Kiss the Ground helped me do is fall in love with the soil health side and really kind of paint a more vibrant picture of the world of composting for me. So I really credit them with that, of me really understanding like its relationship with water, its relationship with the microbes, its relationship with plants. Like before, and I think this is the way most people kind of get into composting, it was more zero waste. I'm not producing waste. I'm not producing waste. And then what a limited view that it got just blown out when I saw it. It's not just limiting waste. It has so much positive impact. It's not just taking away a negative, it adds a positive too.
That's beautiful. So how has Compostable LA managed to keep doing the important work throughout the pandemic?
Luckily, most of us kind of work alone. It sounds kind of lonely, but if you get a good podcast going like this, it's fine. So our drivers are driving solo, bucket washers washing solo. I'm working at my house. So we were really lucky that like a lot of the job is spent kind of alone.
I'm kind of curious, did more people get involved during the pandemic? Because I mean, these are important important issues that relate to not only our interconnectedness, but also I think during the pandemic, a lot of us, fortunately, had a brief moment to stop and say, what is important to me? So I'm just wondering, did you have a lot of people come to you that weren't a part of the program during the pandemic that started to, look at these types of issues a little bit more thoroughly because they had the time? I mean, did you notice anything different happen during the pandemic?
Yeah, it's hard to say because we kind of started blowing up as the pandemic was taking off, because I started the company in June 2019.
Right.
And so we were maybe 7 or 8 months in, and then the pandemic hit, and then, we just kept going. And so I don't know. I have no idea if it was because people just started hearing about us, or people had time to research what they were interested in and then found us. Maybe a little mixture of the two, but we have continued to grow through the pandemic. We definitely haven't slowed down at all. So
that makes me really, really happy to hear. So what can other people do to get involved with Compostable LA? Like, what do they have to do?
Yeah.
get
Well, if
involved?
people want to participate in the program, then, come to our website. You can sign up
Mm-hmm.
for service. Right now, we don't really take volunteers or anything because we're not a nonprofit. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to pay everybody for the work they're doing for us.
Yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
not doing the whole intern thing or whatever. I'm like, hey, if you want to come work for us, I want to be able to pay you. So
Yeah.
I say if you're looking for volunteer hours, go to LA Compost or Root Down LA. We are
Mm-hmm.
working to build out this environmental justice model that will need
Mm.
volunteers and more on that to come. So sign up for our newsletter if you want to hear more about what we're developing in regards to that. But
Awesome.
yeah, definitely follow us, sign up online if you're interested, or volunteer with one of our partners.
And what if they're not in LA and they're listening to this podcast?
Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice that you can give somebody to make an impact?
Go to litterless.com, litterless, litterless.com, and it has a list of all the composters across the nation.
Amazing. Great resource. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing that.
of
And
course.
how do you see soil health of the planet affecting our individual gut health? And this is
Mm,
subject matter that I developed a fermented mocktail company. So
yeah,
really with sustainable glass packaging, et cetera, because of my passion for environmental justice. And also, I think composting is the original form of fermentation. So I'm a total
yeah,
science geek on this stuff. But
yeah.
when it comes to the soil health of the planet, how do you see it affecting the population's gut health?
Well, it's directly interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
The food grown in the soil is the food you eat, and if it's grown in healthy soil, it's funny. They actually say don't wash it that well. Eat some of that soil because you want that
Yeah.
microbial bacteria ending up in your gut. So, I mean, it's not even a stretch for me to connect them. It's literally connected.
Yeah, certified organic.
Yeah,
That's why you can eat a certified organic apple with its skin on it,
yeah,
and not well, I think that there unfortunately is still some stuff in there in the certified organic world,
yeah. There is.
unfortunately, but yeah,
And that's why
it's
that grow your own movement is
hmm
so revolutionary. Like growing your own, which is a privilege, and I will
yes.
highlight that again. That access to soil is access to growing your own. So, but that's why it's so important, because then are you attacking it with pesticides, or maybe maybe neem oil? Maybe that's all you're using for
Yes, I use a
um,
lot of neem over here.
Oh my gosh, I'm losing the battle against the aphids, and I'm like,
Me
fine,
too.
just have it. I don't care anymore.
I swear, I'm looking at my aphids right now, and I'm like, do I need to put a Venus fly next to this? What do I need to
What is it?
do?
I'm like DE and neem oil all over the place. I'm like, come on, Southern
Seriously,
California.
and I know that your background's in mental health, and this is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah.
On a much higher level, how do you see the connection between the collective spiritual consciousness and climate change? How do you
Mm,
see the connection between this with your mental health background?
hmm
I'm just thinking about, like I mentioned, the kids in the inner city that are completely disconnected from where their food comes from or nature itself, and how do they have compassion for the people around them if they don't even understand the interconnectedness of nature? But on a higher level, how do you see this connection between the collective spiritual consciousness, our ability to evolve consciously as a collective,
mm,
and climate change?
mm,
Don't you feel like I do? Like maybe if we don't wake up to understanding our interconnectedness with climate change, how are we
mm.
ever going to evolve as a collective? Like these are things that really concern me.
Yeah, yeah. It's not the inner city kids that I'm worried about not evolving. It's the
Yeah,
people that have the wealth. I mean, the inner
exactly.
city youth and the most vulnerable populations are the ones that are going to feel the effects of climate change the
Right.
most impactful. And so,
Just like the
what,
immigrants. Pardon
right,
me.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And so when I think of mental health in relation to climate change, I think of all the empaths who are in sustainability world because they care so much for the other, and maybe they have a privilege and they recognize that, and so they're doing all this work to try and as a form of caring for the other. And that's, when I think of climate anxiety, and I know there's a lot of talk about climate anxiety being like a white person's privilege, and in some capacities it is. But at least my climate anxiety stems from the pain of another.
Mm-hmm.
From knowing that somebody else is going to suffer for the decisions I made and the external consequences of that decision. And so, I think that kind of taps into that collective consciousness of like, you have to be able to have empathy for that other to even want to change.
Yeah, and it really does start with the wealthy. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know how we can scream loud enough for these people that have the most ability to impact these things that are so important. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say that this past year, with all the political uprising and everything that we've seen with social justice, it's certainly at least being talked about more than
Yeah.
ever. So
With anybody, is to get them on board, it's to find the connection point, to get them engaged is to find where you guys connect. And some people, it's the struggles they've been through in the past life and having a lot of empathy for that. For some people, it's threatening their bottom line.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah, the monetary.
yeah, it's like,
Mhm.
well, we have power, so here we go. So I think that kind of goes back to the ways we connect with one another, and finding common grounds that kind of welcome people into one another's world.
Pun intended, common
Yeah.
ground. I love it. Well, this has been an enlightening interview, and I'm just so grateful for your time, Monique. And I just want to remind everybody to go to compostablela.com and learn more about what you're doing and how to get involved. Thank you so much for all these resources, and just really pleased to have you on the show. So thank you, Monique.
Thank you. It was great.
Take good care
Okay.
of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you at a meeting soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay.
Take care. Bye
Bye.
bye.